Hello, good to see you again. This is going to be Pastor Larry lesson number 4, and it will be for FOR4 this coming Saturday or this weekend, which is February the 1st, the new month. And I'll start by saying that this past week, a dreadful and so far unexplained dockside fire took the lives of 8 people in Scottsboro, and that included 4 young people who are all members of one family. It was the 4 children and the mother were five of the 8 people who died. There were also 7 other people who were at the dock at the time of the fire, but they escaped with their lives, and no doubt terrible loss of property. I think they said there were 35 boats that were in the fire, which was immense loss, thousands of dollars, of course. But tragedy like this shake our sense of security and well-being and often cause people to question their faith. Why would a loving God let His creation suffer such bitter tragedies? I know you've had that thought. We've all had that thought. I think people, and I know for sure at least of one person that has lost faith because of a tragedy, or because of things that happen that God, they feel, should have taken care of or should have protected us against. One thing common to disasters such as this one, though, is a coming together of people, and that's what I'm really thinking about for this lesson, is the faith of assembling clothing, food, financial resources, and organizing worship services. Where there's human need, there is a resource there to take care of it, and this is no exception. The boating community was said to have been closely bonded after often sharing their evening meals together on their boats. And now the larger community has bonded in love for their victims. I call it the light of Christ that shines when a tragedy strikes. The good in people rushes to help in so many ways. I recall Haiti. 10 years ago, a giant 7 earthquake struck the island nation of Haiti right in the center, leaving hundreds dead and massive loss of property and possessions. The adjoining nation of the Dominican Republic was also ravaged by this. This was a natural cause of destruction, and help was forthcoming from all over the world. It was a little slow getting started, but it came, and life goes on today there in Haiti. But again, people of faith had their beliefs shaken, and the light of Christ was there, and it prevailed. No one can explain those natural acts that do so much destruction to people and property, but help came to Haiti, and life goes on there. Nature happens, and too often people are in the way. The tectonic plates in our earth slide, and earthquakes create immense destruction of anything on top of the sliding. And we saw this in Los Angeles area not very long ago. And there's always fear that an even greater one's going to come and visit that area. In the Old Testament, God was at times accused of raining down disasters on His creation. In Job 37:13, and I think most of us are familiar with Job, it says, He brings the clouds to punish men, or to water His earth, or to show His love. And in verse 7, He fills all men with fear by His power. So we're talking about a different presentation of God in that era than now, and I personally don't think that God visits disasters upon us for sin or for any other reason. And I do know that Christ is brought out in these situations in a glorious way that we see. The powers of nature were present to show God's wonder in some cases, and often nature offset the sin of men according to the Old Testament. Very recently, a Huntsville police officer, Officer Clardy, was murdered And the outrage and grief was felt throughout our community. And again, a man-made disaster that called forth great passion from the light of Christ. The funeral had miles and miles of cars all the way from the door of the church to the cemetery. And almost immediately, financial funds were started to help Officer Clardy's family, who were left with needs that had to be made. Good people, people of faith, came together, tragedy to persons and property, the cause. And I might also say that police officers from all over this state and other states were present at his funeral and his celebration. Not just death of people, but death and loss of property. Weather in Huntsville has seen great destruction over the past 50 years. That's about how long I've lived here. And the last major tornado was in 2011, when hundreds of people throughout this area and throughout the entire state lost their lives. And help came from all other regions and states to help resolve and restore the power. My electric here was off for 11 days, and it was different than anything I've experienced, but I was lucky. I had my life, I had my property, and God blessed me greatly that day. The light of Christ brought the region together, and property was repaired and destroyed, landscaped, was restored. The church I attended at the time was housing volunteers who had come to this area to help with the cleanup and other human needs. The Red Cross, churches, food banks, private donors kept food flowing, and life went on. Anyone who lived here at the time has a story to tell you, and they'll be glad to share it with you. The light of Christ was everywhere present. I won't forget that. School shootings, disease, war, traffic disaster, fire, weather disaster, all bring great loss of life and property. But after every disaster, I see the light of Christ and people coming together with the sharing of resources. The late Mr. Rogers on TV always said, look for the helpers. Helpers will always be there. May the light of Christ continue to shine on you and on us. And thank you for listening. Now I've got to tell you, my new classical guitar had to be restrung this week, and I've still got a little bit of work to do on that, so I couldn't play it today. This is a guitar my son's bought me years ago. It doesn't get played very often, but it was one of the first guitars I had from them years ago. Now my other son, my young son, has got a collection of guitars that's larger than mine. But anyway, this is an acoustic guitar. Grandpa's clock, grandfather's clock. Thank you again. See you next week.